Here's a story from Grandpa for my three favorite little girls, Emma, Ayla, and Audrey. Do you like poems? I like poems. When I was your age, I thought that poetry had to rhyme, like Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go. As I got older, I found out that there were lots of poems that didn't rhyme, but I still like them. So, if it doesn't have to rhyme, what is it that makes poetry poetry? That's exactly what the boy in this story wants to know, and he goes on a quest to find out. Here's the story. Daniel Finds a Poem. Written and illustrated by Micah Archer. Daniel knows all the rocks, trees, and animals in the park. On Monday morning, Daniel sees something new on the park gate. A sign reads, "Poetry in the Park, Sunday at 6 o'clock." "What is poetry?" Daniel says. He looks up in surprise when he hears Spider say, "To me, poetry is when morning dew glistens." On Tuesday, Daniel climbs the old oak tree. He sees Squirrel. "Squirrel, do you know what poetry is?" "Poetry is when crisp leaves crunch," Squirrel tells him. On Wednesday, Daniel calls into Chipmunk's hole. "Chipmunk, can you tell me what poetry is?" Poetry? Poetry is a home with many windows and an old stone wall. On Thursday, Daniel makes a boat with a leaf for a sail and watches the wind carry it across the pond. He calls quietly to Frog. "Excuse me, Frog, what is poetry?" "Poetry," says Frog, "is a cool pool to dive into." On Friday, Daniel parts the cattails and finds Turtle. "Hello, Turtle. I have a question. Do you know what poetry is?" "I think poetry is sun-warmed sand," Turtle says. On Saturday afternoon, Daniel finds Cricket in the shade of the slide. When the shadows are long, Cricket fills the air with music. "Is this poetry to you, Cricket?" "Singing at twilight when the day is done? Indeed it is, Daniel." That night, moonlight fills Daniel's room. He hears a "whoo." Leaning from his window, he calls to Owl. "Owl, what is poetry?" "Oh, poetry. Poetry is bright stars in the branches, moonlight on the grass, and silent wings to take me wherever I go." "Good night, dear Daniel," she whispers and flies off into the night. On Sunday, the sun wakes up Daniel. He is happy when he remembers it's Sunday. "Today is poetry in the park," says Daniel, "and I have a poem." Morning dew glistens, crisp leaves crunch. There's a home with many windows in the old stone wall. Cool pools to dive in, sun-warmed sand to lie in, singing at twilight when the day is done. Bright stars in the branches, moonlight on the grass, and silent wings to take me wherever I go. On the way home, Daniel stops to watch the sunset sky reflecting in the pond. "That looks like poetry to me." "To me too," says Dragonfly. And that's the end of the story. Last Sunday I was sitting in my backyard under an Arizona lilac tree in the early morning. It wasn't hot for a change, and it wasn't cold. The temperature was just right, with just a hint of breeze in the air. As I sat reading a very good book, Dickens and Dory, my two greyhounds, were sound asleep in the shade just a few feet away. If Daniel had come up at that moment and asked me what poetry is, I would have told him, "This moment right now is poetry." And it was. I'll remember that moment with joy for a very long time. What would you tell Daniel if he asked you that question? Always remember that Grandpa loves you, because you're a pretty great poem yourself, and I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.